Hello everyone, welcome back to another gut check, this time the Dot and Bubble edition. And welcome to the Pertwee Smith bubble. If you're new around here, then please do consider hitting the subscribe button because it really does help the channel out, and you can stay in the Pertwee Smith bubble. If you're an old time regular viewer, thanks for joining the bubble yet again. Yes, this story, Dot and Bubble, where to start? I think this story, pun intended, there's a lot to digest within this story. It's a story I was quite frankly dreading. From the little promo clips they were releasing, I thought, oh god, this isn't gonna be my cup of tea. You know, this is giving me season 24, and I don't like season 24. That's not my flavour of Doctor Who. I like my sort of gothic horror sort of style stories. I like my Pertwee stories. I like my Tom Baker, Hinchcliffe stuff. That's my flavour of Doctor Who. I eat up. Very good Doctor Who. But this, I thought it could go either way. And with Russell saying that this is going to be a commentary on social media, and we'll talk about what I think of that and the message behind it. And it's an idea he's had since 2010, and now it's finally out there for us to enjoy. And I think that it's a good idea, and I think that it's become more prevalent now. But we'll talk about why I think it's such a good idea in a minute. So what did I make of Dot and Bubble? Well, I think that it was a fine time. It was a fine time in fine time. Let's break down Dot and Bubble. So let's start off with the positives, and we'll move into my criticisms I have within this. So let's talk about the star of the show, the slugs. Yes, the slugs. Doctor has a tendency to do sort of insects. We've had woodlice in the form of the tractators. We've had giant spiders, beetles, butterfly people, ants, I guess, with the Zarbi, and now we have slugs. These were like the first thing we saw of RTD sort of 2 filming for season 1, and yeah, it's definitely not what I was expecting. I think that it's nice to have an alien threat within there. We didn't really know much about them, but we stand the slugs basically. They're good. They're not the bad guys. I guess it's a bit Galaxy 4 in a way. They're a bit like the Rills, but yeah, slugs get a thumbs up. In the town itself of Finetime, it's got this wonderful sort of artificial nature to it, which I think is great, sort of a social media commentary that we are, you know, that we put things out on social media which are kind of artificial to make ourselves look good and make ourselves seem rather exciting and not actually quite dull people. So I really like that, and I think that there's this wonderful sort of Macra Terror feel to it, isn't there? This sort of happy colony, nothing's wrong, it's all great, but people are being ate by massive slugs and going missing. So it's you know, kind of a traditional Doctor setup, really. So let's talk about the main thing about this story, the message behind it, with the social commentary on social media. I think that it's probably more prevalent now than probably when Russell first thought of the idea, and I think that this message could go either way with it, in terms of it could have been Old Man Yowls at Clouds, but I think it's the latter. I think RTD has really nailed it, and I think, like I said, this message has become more prevalent because, you know, the idea of Dot and Bubble, as soon as we see Lindy Pepperbean, she's out on, you know, checking her bubble, checking her social media. That's the first thing most people do now, is go on their phones, see if they've got any notifications, seeing you know, what's going on in our own little bubbles ourselves. So I think the idea of the bubble is great, and the idea of Dot actually being sort of tailored towards you, getting to know your habits. And that's basically social media, that we get adverts that are tailor-made to us to buy things. How we consume social media and how we sort of quickly want snapshots of people's days, people's lives, you know, with stories. And I think that it's interesting how it sort of, I don't want to say made people brain dead, but how it sort of, we kind of want to be spoon-fed these things, and how it sort of affected the society of Finetime, that they can't function without the bubble. That, you know, maybe Russell's trying to say touch grass, I don't know, but you know, the idea of, you know, that you need arrows to follow, you know, how to walk, how to move around Finetime itself. I thought that was a really great idea, that, you know, you need that they can't function without that. I thought that was great, that their sort of meltdown and don't know how to people, how to sort of social interact, and the idea that everyone's in their own little bubble, and even the actual town itself being in its own little bubble, enclosed environment, that it's shut off from the world, is a great sort of commentary how we sort of shut ourselves off from the outside world when things are pretty bleak, and things are pretty bleak on the home planet because they've all been devoured by big slugs. I have to say, the thing what really elevated this story from being a meh okay to okay, this is pretty fine, it has to be the ending with the Doctor and Ruby. I think this is the thing what one of my negatives I have with this story is it's another sort of Doctor-like story. I think, you know, having it sort of 2 weeks back to back is a little bit of a strange thing to do, especially when this is meant to be sort of for new audience. I understand the circumstances that Ncuti was filming Sex Education at the time as well, but it just seems you could have formatted the episodes a little bit better just so we, you know, more balanced. But I think the ending, it's stunning, isn't it? This is a moment where Ncuti talked about that this is where he really had to step up to the mark, and you can tell that this is early days for him as the Doctor because of that sort of fake moustache, and also this sort of outburst and laugh felt very sort of like his character in Sex Education, Eric, that he's sort of stunned in disbelief that this society doesn't want to really be saved because, you know, they don't want to be contaminated. They don't have the ability to sort of think freely and sort of think rationally because they've just been so enclosed in their own little world, and they think that they're doing right when, quite frankly, they're all toxic. I think that is brilliant, and I think what would have really made this moment even stronger is if this was the first time we saw the 15th Doctor shed a tear. And technically it is the first time the 15th Doctor shed a tear first, because this is like one of the first episodes Ncuti filmed. But it would have added more gravitas and weight to the moment, because the moment's already brilliant. The score of 15, the rendition within that scene is beautiful, and it's just amazing that he's just begging to save these people's lives, but they just don't want it, and that is really sort of heartbreaking, because there isn't a happy ending for this story. These characters aren't worth it. Ricky Sunday, yeah, great. I think he's a wonderful sort of Doctor surrogate character, you know, that he sort of switched himself off from the bubble and has educated himself in wider context than just being sort of a social media star, I guess. My God, his death, one of the most savage deaths in Doctor Who. Like, my God, that dot going straight through his head, that's a headshot, and it's really quite gruesome. And this story does have some quite gruesome moments when sort of the slugs sort of dragging people away and you see sort of like blue blood. It's weird and it's quite creepy, and obviously the slugs sort of devouring people, but you know, you don't feel bad once you get the context that these people are actually horrible. Speaking of horrible, Lindy Pepperbean, what an absolute, yeah, a character you love to hate. You feel sorry for her, but you're like, oh, she's just a bit ditzy. But by the end of it, you're like, yeah, the slug should have just ate you at this point for what you did to Ricky Sunday. So yeah, I think the performance was brilliant by the actress playing Lindy Pepperbean. And that's the thing I love about this story. It feels very Russell, the names of the characters. It has this sort of wonderful sort of domestic but also sort of futuristic by putting the ordinary sort of mundane items within it and sort of twisting it and putting in adding a name to it. I think that was great. The sort of twist that the slugs are sort of eating people alphabetically, that was great, and a nice little revelation within the story. It has some nice fun moments with sort of the Doctor and Ruby sort of interacting, you know, but they're actually in the same room. That was great. But yeah, I think having, you know, I'm not a huge sort of Doctor Light fan thing, and like I said, I think that's one of the negatives, having sort of back-to-back Doctor Light episodes. And I think that 73 Yards really carried it, because obviously we've got to know Ruby within it, and I think the bits with the Doctor and Ruby really sort of elevate the story within it. And like I say, the ending really makes the story, you know, great. And like I say, the messaging fantastic. And I'm glad that we've told it, and it's a story that you really need to sort of reflect and digest. I've only watched it once, but I definitely will watch it again to sort of process it a bit more, so this is just sort of my initial reaction to it. So what would I give Dot and Bubble? A story I was dreading but was pleasantly surprised, but I enjoyed it. I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10. I think that it's a solid one. Again, it's proving what Doctor Who can do with sort of a genre thing. But it's I think this is a wonderful thing with this season. It's showing what Doctor Who can do and why it's brilliant and why it's lasted so long. And I really like that we're getting different flavours of Doctor Who. So each week, you know, if you don't like a certain episode, don't worry, next week we're going to have something completely different. And I like that sort of freedom we've got within this. I know Russell said that the rules have been broken because of the toy maker. Now we can have anything. And I think that we're definitely seeing some experimental ideas, and I think that's really refreshing and quite rejuvenating the show. But yeah, Dot and Bubble, 7 out of 10. The ending, the messaging really makes it. So yeah, thank you everyone for watching this gut check, and I'll see you next time for Rogue, which seems like it's going to be an interesting one. It could, yeah, the trailer's not done much for me, but we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, that has been Dot and Bubble, so thank you everyone for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.